let me just concentrate on what I want to say.
Let me put that on record. They'll minute it. Thank you, Makosi Kosa. Maturity. When he gets his PhD in the year 2090, it may be of the same caliber.
Chair, you know, let me say this is an extremely intricate matter. Extremely intricate. You know, Chair, because you know when you have a legitimate narrative that must be heard, it is absolutely critical that at least when you are narrating that you are standing on a high moral ground. And again, it is absolutely important that you avoid silly technicalities that may work in your disfavor. And Chair, I'm saying this because it's a common cause that corruption in this country has reached crippling levels. We need to deal with it. But on the other hand, Chair, I can't lie and say I have not made observations that those who seem to be having challenges with this bill, the amendments, are black Africans. And those that seem to support the bill in its totality are not. And that speaks to our racially overtone characterization of our economy, notwithstanding that, Chair. Maybe I have to be very honest with USA and with BBC and PPL. You know, I want to understand why they do not participate in the process of Parliament that would have made your legitimate story heard at an appropriate time. Don't you think you are compromising the president by not taking part in the parliamentary public participation processes and going straight to the president? You are also making our job very difficult, by the way. Because right now, you've heard that, you know, there is very little we can do in terms of probably amending certain sections other than that specific area that the president has raised. I really wanted to ask you this because honestly, we shouldn't be found to be guilty of sharing collected stupidity. I don't want to be associated with that. And it's a painful thing because we really have to start understanding that there are parameters, there are procedures. We are operating within certain confines, and it makes it very difficult for us to hear you are making a very important, very valuable contribution. But they are coming so late in the process. And some of us are even feeling so frustrated about that. Having said that, Chair, I think they have to answer this question because I think everybody wants to hear that. We do not want it to be seen to be anti-fights against corruption. Corruption is undermining our developmental agenda in South Africa. And when we undermine the systems of parliament and we undermine all these processes, we are actually feeding into these stereotypes and into these narrow agendas. And the Chair, having said that, I think it's Kasek or whatever, where they mentioned that, or Kasek, they mentioned that in the referrals, in both referrals, in the referrals to Parliament, and the letters and the court papers, or the responding affidavit from the presidency. The president attached the PPF and the BBC letters or whatever objections to me. Now, I wanted to know, what is the status of those letters? The fact that there have been attachments, yes, I understand that in the actual letter itself, the issues that are raised in those letters are not necessarily part of the letter of the president, but the attachments are part of the submission of the president. What is the status, the legal status of those? Chair, the other question, the final question that I also wanted to ask is from the PPF and BBC, is that what do they think, what is their recommendation of what we should do, what we should do as Parliament, given the fact that we have rules of Parliament that are very clear. We cannot attend to any other thing other than what is contained in the letter that the President submitted to us, unless the answer that is going to be coming from CASEC is going to suggest otherwise. But from what they were saying, I'm not sure what's the status of these letters that get attached to court, got attached everywhere, but they never find them. Those letters, they never find their way to us before they went to the President. It's like you go to the highest authority and we feel undermined as a result as well by yourselves. And yet you have a very legitimate story. Now, what do you think should be done? How do we work around this? Because the reality is that at the end of the day, we are parliamentarians. We have a set of rules. You see, you make people like Floyd celebrate, man. Okay, so you know, and I wanted to understand what is your recommendation, and because we also have to abide by the rules, and we have to fight corruption. We have to. You know, the unfortunate thing about the issues that you are raising under PEP, okay? There are issues that were raised during, anyway, Chair, I wasn't part of the other processes because of my whatever. But Chair, I remember that when we had our meeting, when we interrogated this bill, most of the issues that you are raising, they were raised during the process. But you were not there. Basta was there. And that goes with discipline, comrades. It's very important. That is the most important thing. We've got to be disciplined. We can't come and go to the top office and we don't come to the office, to the processes that are too small for you, maybe. Now you are sitting with a problem. Where you went to the top office, you left us here, and now we must intervene. How are we going to intervene? Because we are also constrained. So I just wanted to know your own views around how best can we address these issues. Because the truth is, the majority of Black Africans in particular, I'm talking about them in particular, they may, in the final analysis, be classified as your politically exposed persons by virtue of the fact that we live in villages, we have extended families, one you know the other person and the other person knows the other person, and that's the way we live. But those things never found expressions during the process. We need to correct that. How do we do that when we have this constraint, that legality? Thank you, Chair.
Pule and then Atandi had put a hand up first, but doesn't matter. There's a top-up had done. Doesn't make any difference because it's, look, there's a roving mic, so why don't we do it in sequence, easier to facilitate. Right, fine. Doesn't make any difference. Go for it. Thank you. So you'll give it to top-up behind, you'll give it to Tandi. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I must also agree with the views that were already expressed by Honorable Tellis, that some of these progressive legislations, like FICA, fighting corruption, dealing with money laundering, have existed when the ANC was at the helm of the state, like it is still now. Before 1994, these things were not there. So the ANC has got all the rights to claim superiority over such, because we are the ones that have facilitated legislations and laws that fight corruption in this country. So and it is only a progressive government that once laws are made and they are referred back, opens up to stakeholders, so that such laws, as they are introduced in the public domain, they also assist, facilitate the participation of everyone in the mainstream of the economy. The organization I represent, the ANC, has taken a firm stand that one of the things that are going to be happening now is to drive a rigorous economic transformation program. And that means that financial institutions and all other institutions that are out there meant to facilitate the participation of the African majority in the economy, at least operate in a fair manner as well. You know, Chapter 3 of the Constitution, for instance, spells out cooperative governance. Now you are saying these inspectors will be stationed somewhere in the Reserve Bank. So we must be able, because then you ask yourself that why do you want to create an environment where you are going to have a banks that play the roles of players and referees and ultimately determine who is bankable and who is not in the country. And I thought this is the gist of what has been brought back. And of course, because you see, we must also be careful that along the way we do not necessarily reduce this kind of an important issue into an issue that actually talks to personality interests and all of that. I mean, if that was the case, even ourselves, ANC deployees in this committee, would not have agreed to do so. You know, we are coming here because all stakeholders, civil society broadly, and those that are affected. You see, when someone from BBC says their accounts are being closed, that is an important matter. It requires special attention. You can't ignore such. You know, when we're growing up out there in Palabora, Honorable Shivambu, we did not believe that people died until we had a funeral at home. So, you see, so people die. You don't have to wait to have a funeral at home, and only then do you believe. You know, these political parties, by the way, outside the ANC, they are fighting for what the ANC has: state power. They must wait until they are in power. They will see it in some of those municipalities, that some of the rhetoric that they are screaming about might become an impossibility. It doesn't work like that. So it's important that you listen to everyone. You know, Parliament has got processes, and one of the processes that this Parliament has provided is the possibility to review laws. It doesn't mean that when we have passed a law at a certain point, and once you are done, discover a mistake, you don't have to come back. You say, no, oh, I'm not, it's only baby. You see, you can't change words that are written in the Bible. You're not going to change and say, because I hate Joshua, hey, change, you live with that. That is what is written. But laws are not like that. If you move on and you discover things that require a review, and stakeholders come back, we engage and then say, because I'm sure that all of us sitting here, Chair, our desire is to create an equal society. You know, we want to try and put forward laws that will accommodate everyone. You know, whether it's EFF, whether it's the DA, whether it's the ANC, all of us must say the laws made by the People's Parliament accommodate all of us. Because African majority, who have for a long time been oppressed, can now participate in the mainstream because the laws allow them to do so. And I thought that some of the things that are brought forward by stakeholders, so that it is also important that when views are brought forward to Parliament, there is also that balance, even from organizations. And I think Honorable Makosi is making a correct point, that it cannot be that the historically have-nots are the ones who see a problem with this, and whereas the historically haves don't see an issue. Because once you do that, then it means there's a serious dialectical imbalance. It means others are saying the status quo must continue to hold. You know, how we are looked at, and outside, and something that is linked to this Fic Bill, how we are looked at even when we go to banks to borrow. You know, the issue of where you come from also determines the value you have. You know, if I come from Palamura, I already know that the houses there will not fetch the same value as someone who comes from Samrend or something. And yet all of us stay in the same country. So we ought to be giving attention to this. So I thought that maybe one of the things that you must provide as guidance is how do we then take a process like this one forward so that we are not seen to have excluded other views. Because remember, Chair, you must also remember that there are people who raise issues here not because of what they seek to resolve, but because of grandstanding, politicking, and all of that. We should be working towards finding a solution and a balance in the society with it. Thanks, Chair.
Of course, you give a chance, but not on leading issues. But let them speak.
No needling, Floyd. I mean, you said things, he put his hand up immediately. Floyd, can't we move on? Yeah, well, he'll speak and then you can reply. And then we'll sit here till 7 o'clock. Fine. Okay, good. I'm available. Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love to rise to the occasion of debating the ownership of legislation and principles, but I'm going to keep myself...
Good. No knee needling.
Yeah,
right, fine.
The reason where we are to discuss specifically Section 45B1C. That being said, I first want to make a point that I think that some of the issues raised by the Black Business Council specifically are really legitimate concerns, and they are shared by members of my party as well, even though we haven't discussed this. There's a common thread and common complaint out there as to how certain aspects of the Act are being applied by banks, etc. And I think in some ways it might be difficult to actually fault the banks, because it's easier to be strict and close accounts rather than fall foul of the law. And it is creating great hardship for legitimate business, and it's not achieving the purposes of that. So I think that what we should as a committee take note of is that there is this burning issue, and that this platform today has been used to raise it and bring it to our attention. And though we have to focus on 45 B1C, at some point, I think the Financial Intelligence Center and maybe BOSS have to come back and tell us why this is happening and what can we do to help banks maybe...
We've got a date, 14th of March. You don't read the mail. 14th of March, that's what we're discussing. But go ahead.
Okay, so there is legitimate concern. Even though we might not better handle it today, I think it's been heard and it is shared by members from our side of the party. And the unintended consequences of all legislation specifically have to be considered, and I've taken note of that, and I'm sure other members will as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Gandhi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, let me first start to acknowledge the presentation that was made by Dr. Vanessa Malone, and especially when she said there's a need to workshop the Fic Act. I take it for granted that the officials from the FIC has taken note of that and will take business on board, especially when it explains the role of inspectors in terms of administrative regulations. Because the gist of the matter here that we need to unlock is the understanding of the administrative inspection that is done by administrators and the criminal inspections that are made by the criminal justice and make a differentiation there. So I think that matter is taken into account. Second, I know I will not ask, in a normal situation, I will not ask a direct question to BASA in relation to client relationship. But a very important matter has been raised here. And I think, Chair, there will be nothing wrong if BASA makes a commitment to sit down with business, because it's in the interest of economic growth. BASA, it will be for its own benefit, for the flourishment of business in South Africa. Now I'm speaking, wearing my previous cap when I was in trade, where I would encourage business and banks to do it better. Therefore, it's very imperative to, at some point, facilitation of the meeting between BASA and business to discuss this matter of flagging. It's a very serious issue. It must be attended to. So we don't want to discuss like confidentiality as to what transactions have transpired between an individual client and a specific bank, but to address those matters, to deal with this matter, and we're led to believe that there is a better relationship, because ours is to facilitate. But I must hasten to say, I take exception of what Comrade Mani has said today in terms of the role of this committee. It's a very open committee. It's a committee that takes submissions even to the last day. It was unfortunate that you were not part of the participation. And I don't want to engage in an ideological discussion, because the word rule by law and the rule of law, it's a matter that whether you want to raise a dialectical argument or otherwise, we understand very well. And I can take you to task at a different platform where we belong in terms of politics for the combination. So I suggest that we touch on that. Second, Chair, and that's going to be my last point. Can we have someone to explain thoroughly the administrative functions and powers of inspectors vis-a-vis those of law enforcement agencies? And I'll tell you why I'm deliberately going through this process, is to make sure that we all are in one going forward. In my point of view, any other matter that can come back to the Fic Act, there's a different process of doing that. We should leave here being one to understand that it's the prescripts of the law that subject us to focus on those matters that has been mentioned as unconstitutional. Any other matter we need to deal with them through another process. So we will expect such inputs at the legislature.
Can I plead with you? Are you going to respond in the narrow political exchanges with, what's his name, Pule? I really urge you don't do. I can't prescribe to you. Because then he's going to reply. Let's deal with the issues, please, man.
Chair, I'd say that perhaps there might be need to workshop the details of the legislation that would deal with it, particularly the interested stakeholders. But it looks like even with members of Parliament, because this is the bill which is the pretend from the President after having been passed by his committee. This committee is the one that primarily was responsible for this bill, went page per page, section per section. But it looks like a majority of the things that are a surprise to particularly members of the ruling party. They're getting to be familiar with that for the first time today. I think the study groups must work harder to cure that. Now, the chairperson, they are
not saying anything that goes against the rules, and you know that. You'll have to reply, please. I can only abide by the rules, man. No, Makosi, I'm not allowing it. You can reply to him.
Yeah, I'm dealing with the impact.
Overrule him. I don't have the right. This is a parliament, and the chair is bound by the rules. Go and change the rules.
The impact of all legislators in a revolution of all revolutionaries comes out of understanding time, context, space, and the vehicles and instruments that you use to respond to whatever situation. So you might not think that, no, because we need transport to cross to the other side, you can just take any other transport. Even if you've got legitimate concerns, like you must know what vehicle do I use, what instruments do I use to deal decisively with these concerns that I have. In the example I'm giving, that you can't say, no, because I want to cross to the other side of the river, I'm going to just take the bicycle because the next one, and then I drive through. You'll drown. There are systems that we've agreed upon, they are legislations that you use to respond to certain phenomena and problems. Now, there's a problem of financial crimes of non-compliance to international financial systems. Now, the FIC bill is a response to that. Majority of the issues have been dealt with in a consultative process. It's taken to a president, the Black Business Council.
Right, you're repeating what you said now.
But Chair, I want to give you a clearer context of what we're dealing with here, because you're convoluting the issue in a way which, when we started this meeting, we made a commitment that we're going to attend to the issues that were brought to our attention by the president, which are the warrantless searches. The president never objected to the inspectorate, never objected to politically exposed persons, never objected to all these things that you want to conflict. And if you think those are areas of concern, deal with it through a different process. We'll engage there in terms of why some of the things can be considered, why some things cannot be considered. But now we're dealing with one aspect that speaks to warrantless searches. And we have to take the legislation back to the House and back to the President for signing, because the other limitation of not doing so means that these international agreements, which you can conveniently ignore, might begin to classify South Africa as a non-compliant country. And the Secretary General of the ANC, by the way, says on behalf of the National Executive Committee that if we are not compliant to those international statutes, South Africa is going to be isolated, is going to collapse the whole system. So you must know which instrument to use when. But most importantly, Chair, members of the ANC in Parliament must familiarize themselves with documents and not thumb-suck things and say things they don't understand anything about.
Your point now.
Thank you very much.
Right, now hold on, I'm sharing. No, hold on, I'm sharing. Right, I've explained to you yesterday what the issues are in a study group meeting. I'm obliged to abide by the rules of Parliament. There is nothing Floyd has said that violates the rules. What teeters towards violating the rules was the last statement you made. Now, I want to repeat to members who are unhappy about my chairing to go and change the rules, or you have a choice of moving a vote of no confidence here. I'll step down. But I have no choice. These rules were shaped mostly by the party I come from. So let's be clear. One, I need to clarify before you come on. Mr. Shivambu, you're not being fair because you were not around, but you didn't obviously read the emails. And I want to make this clear. Maybe I should. One, we have said to people, and I'm addressing the BBC and others, particularly the BBC and PPF, that there are two hearings taking place. The one is today, that is bound by the rules and by the constitutional verdicts or judgments related to that. The second hearing, which we decided, by the way, Dr. Baloya and Mr. Mani, before you even appeared on the scene, in the sense of, I think the President brought the bill back to us in early December. You can look at our report to Parliament. We said, and I hope Basa is listening, Mr. Kuvadia, right, listen. We said on that FSR bill, although we are tightening the rules and regulations, and although banks have to account to the public, their customers mainly, and to the state and to Parliament, so that 2008 never occurs, because it disproportionately affects the poor. Even in the Western world, the working class and lower middle classes suffer the most. We said we want a public hearing on the transformation of the entire financial sector. In my exchanges with Selo, Rasetaba, and I think Sipile Buthelezi, I made that clear in telephonic exchanges of my letters. So, we said, today we will focus on what the rules say. Next time we will focus on all these other issues. The issues you raise as BBC, they have to be addressed by a separate process, which means a specific set of amendments. If the executive now decides that it had introduced bills that have unintended consequences that they hadn't foreseen, then the executive has a right to bring another bill. They can even bring it in the next month or two. We'll deal with those issues there. However, the BBC, in particular, refused to accept this separation. They said, no, we're misunderstanding, which is their right. So what did we do today? We said this is an open popular parliament. It belongs to the people. We can tell them, please focus on the issues. We even got advocates here, senior counsel here. But if people insist now on raising other issues, all we have to do is, once there's clarity about the rules, Mr. Jenkins has been told, separate the issues that relate to the rules from the issues that are policy issues that they want